All right, since it's 6:03, we'll bring the Mashpee Board of Health to order for the December 2nd, 2021 meeting. Our first item of business tonight is the review and approval of expense warrants. Glenn, do we have any expense warrants this evening?
This is then you can go to Glenn after.
Oh, sure.
Ernie, there's a pen behind your computer.
I dropped it?
No, it's right on the table.
Ah, there it is. Thank you.
I knew you couldn't see it. Brian, you hit the recorder?
Yep.
Awesome.
Just one place? Except one,
Yep. I think so. Just one
oh,
minute.
yeah.
All right, very good. I'm going to take this a little bit out of order this evening, just so we can get people out of here a little bit quicker. So let's go back up to under old business, the show cause hearing for the kennel regulation violations, positive dog training.
There's nobody here for that. You sure you want to do that right now, where you have other people waiting, or?
Okay, well, I saw Officer Chacoin is here.
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry,
So, do
I
you-
didn't see the applicant, that's all. Okay.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
did you expect him to come tonight? Or?
No, he was notified, but he didn't show up to the other couple hearings, so I would say no, so.
Okay, well, let's take it up then. I have a feeling he's not going to show up, so.
Okay.
If you could just give us the update on this one, please.
Well, this was a continued show cause hearing for the operation of unlicensed kennel that was called Positive Dog Training of Cape Cod, located at Unit 10, 46 Nicoletta's Way. At the last meeting, the board voted to continue the hearing until the full board was available to make a decision. The board intended to issue fines, but the health agent's observations at the property prompted a fine of $300, and the board was interested in issuing fines based upon the failure of the operator to obtain a kennel license from the town. During the conversations with the operator, Matthew Noon, he explained that he had been operating for 8 to 9 months at that location, and the lease, as described by Mr. Haratunian, who was the property manager, ran from October 2020 to October 2021. This means that if it was a one-year lease, basically from November 1 to October 31, therefore there were 26 actual work weeks, or approximately 144 days, that the dog training facility operated. And the Board of Health Kennel Regulation requires a process to be followed where the applicant goes through site plan review and then obtains a kennel license from the town clerk's office. None of the process was followed, and an operator of dog training facilities, or at least a trainer of 20 years, and the operator said he'd been in business for 8 years. Somebody with that experience should know to get a kennel license from each town that they work in, and that was not done. The board did issue a cease and desist back on September 16th, and we had not seen any operation since then.
Okay. And I think we had, I missed the November 4th meeting, but I think we had a discussion when we first took this up about getting opinion from legal counsel, town council, on
Yeah.
what the, sort of some of our options were with the fines.
Yeah.
What were the findings from that?
I forwarded them to you, did you not? Did you get them?
Oh, I see a bit of a summary here on it, but I was just curious if
I
there was.
can show them to you,
Okay.
but I did forward them to you. It starts at the bottom paragraph, and then the next page. Sorry, it's a little small.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay. Did you also get a chance to?
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
reviewed it.
Oh, yeah, I did.
Okay, you got a chance to review this? Okay. I apologize for not seeing this. Okay. So then it would seem that the most justifiable fine is the $200 fine for 2 dogs.
Yeah, there was a description further from council that stated, the board has a little more latitude to go back, but, said that there were issues with that where there were no previous, anything given in writing to the operator at the time, but still, I think there is some latitude there, but, it's definitely open to challenge if it's done, and I don't think council was saying not to do it, but just expect that there were some things that could be challenged based upon the way that the fines would be issued. So, but it sounded like the courts had given boards of health some latitude to go back and issue retroactive fines. So I don't think the council's opinion was not solid either way.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I feel like that retroactive is definitely applicable in certain situations. As an example, if somebody had a housing unit with some sort of material in it, and you knew it was there for a period of time before it was discovered, then that's fairly easy to demonstrate. But to me, to demonstrate that there were dogs in the facility without any direct evidence is, it's certainly hard to defend, regardless that he was in operation or had a lease for that, that full period of time. So, what's your opinion?
It's exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
After reading through,
I don't want to bring the town through unnecessary legal
Yeah.
litigation on this, just because, I mean,
I don't see that, how we're gonna justify it, and, I just don't,
yeah.
I don't know if it's a matter of, in a lot of, a lot of these situations where, I mean, you gotta put more meat into these types of things happening, and if you don't, this is what you get left with.
Yeah.
So it's kind of so disgusting, and we go on and on with all kinds of things, not just this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bad state of affairs. That's my comment.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in consensus with whatever you guys are saying. I think that without concrete evidence, we don't, as much as we would probably like to, charge a higher fine for him breaking the regulations or whatever it might be. I think it just seems safer to actually issue the fine for the stuff that we have known of, such as the dogs barking and stuff. My only question is in regards to the fine that we had discussed from the time before. Would that be 300 or the 200? Because as I'm reading through your summary, we had talked about
Yeah, I think that
300.
3 dogs were heard
Right.
at the property. And if it's $100 per dog,
Yeah.
I guess it would be a $300 fine. I think
Okay.
council referred to a $200 fine, but you may not have that.
Yeah, they said the 2 dogs would be.
Yeah, so I guess it would be a $300 fine for 3 dogs.
Just want to make sure with that. Thank you.
I think that's the most defensible. If you were there, you heard dogs. I mean, that's really unfortunately the best we can do with it. I don't like it, but.
I don't either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
All right, so go ahead. Make a motion to issue a fine of $300 based upon the 3 dogs being kept at the unlicensed facility at Unit 10, 46 Nicoletta's Way, as witnessed by the Assistant Health Agent at this time.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Just a note to our Mashpee TV gentleman in the back. Sorry, we're getting a lot of feedback up here. Is he in there? I don't know where that's coming from.
I'm gonna push this off, because,
It's on.
no, because I have 2 on, so I feel like it's echoing me. This kind of,
Oh, okay, so, yeah, if you're gonna use that one,
Yeah,
I'll
I'll-
take this one out of the way to
yeah, I
stop,
think
try
I'll
to.
reach over.
I don't know if there's like a, here, that's better.
Yeah.
Push the mic so I can hear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to turn the mics up so I can hear you. If you can pull your mics closer, I can.
Okay, okay, you got it. Thank you.
Brendan, can you pull your mic closer? 'Cause
Well, he said just pull our mics a little closer to our faces so that we can eliminate that feedback issue.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So item number 3, the Santoui Pond Survey update. Glenn, if you could give us sort of a,
Okay, we are still in the process of obtaining all the information for the survey. We sent out 55, now 52 letters as a reminder to submit the final information. It's going to be their final notice to provide either the septic inspection report or the pumping. So we'll have a full tally in another week. And, but also I'd like to talk about the sewers. We do have sewer commission members here as far as they had questions. And I think now is the time to review them because it has to do with Santoui as far as the phasing of the sewers and what to do with those systems that are failed. And I think we need to have that discussion because a decision will have to be made at some point what to do with the, I think, 19 or so systems that are failed right now.
sure, sure. I'd like to invite our sewer commissioners to come up, and if you want to, we can have a little discussion about it if you'd like.
Should we sit?
Either, whatever you're comfortable with. I'm not a stickler on that kind of thing.
So there were questions that were submitted by
Yep.
Mr. Rapaz as Chair of the Sewer Commission.
Okay. Would you like to we could just run through the questions, or did you want to open with anything, or what do you think is the best way to?
Well, we'd like to open with a thank you, Brian, for,
Okay.
at that last joint board meeting, your suggestion about figuring out what the hell we're going to do with sludge was a good one, and we've dedicated a fair amount of time to it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
So we think we're as prepared as we can be, considering there's a lot of ifs.
Yeah, definitely are.
But anyway, thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
We have lots of questions.
Okay, we don't have to just stick to the list. I mean, we can, I would like us to be on more of the same page than I think historically has been. So I think this is a good opportunity to have these types of conversations, because this directly impacts, things that either are further down on our agenda as to how we're going to deal with systems that come before us in the future. So to have a better sense of, where everything is with the plan, I think is a good thing for us to do. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I have a question that I think it touches on almost all of these. And we were wondering if it would be possible for you folks, because we know that Title V says that you must hook up to a sewer if it runs past your house, unless you're an IA system. We were wondering if you could change that and eliminate the IA thing, so that it says if it runs past your house, whether you have IA, Title V, cesspool, you must hook up to the sewer. And in helping you to do that, we would provide the community and you with a map that showed what areas are to be sewered, what streets are to be sewered, and when. Is that something
Yeah, I mean, I
you
think
folks
that-
would consider?
I think that would be definitely very helpful, and particularly if we have, particularly the timelines, to me, is the critical piece of things. Because, we certainly run into situations where it's a failed system next to a water course where we require an IA system because it's, close enough to the water body. So we'd want to, definitely have those maps available so that we can make a better decision on some of those things as to whether we required the installation of a system. I mean, I don't have myself many qualms with the concept of requiring connection regardless of that particular status. Generally speaking, I would like to set, though, some sort of a conditional on that for the eventual prospect of those alternative technologies, if they become available and if they become generally approved. Whereby if someone were to utilize that particular technology, that they wouldn't be required to replace it immediately, but perhaps when the system life came to an end, at that point they would connect, because they'd still be providing the same amount of protection, and they'd be putting in a fairly expensive system in the process. So, that to me, if we set, a nitrogen threshold or something like that, so that if you put in a system that is highly performing, and you did that, say, 5 years before sewer came along because you wanted to do something, I don't want to punish that person for taking that action to help protect our water resources, just because, we want to get all those systems out of the ground. So that would be kind of my thought on that. I don't know exactly how to structure something like that.
The short answer is yes, it can be done.
Yes.
And it would be done through a regulation, and it really, if the board wants to set any conditions upon it, and Brian said it could be done either performance-based, to say if you're meeting your 19 milligrams per liter of nitrogen, or if you're
Or
not
better.
meeting your 19 milligrams per liter of nitrogen, then you could do it that way. Another town has done it, they did a 10-year time frame to say if the IA has been in operation for 10 years, then if it's older than 10 years, then you have to connect up, that they're saying that you've gotten your life expectancy out of it. If it's less than 10 years, then you're granted to use it until that 10-year period and then connect up. So there's different ways of doing it, and both Sewer Commission and Board of Health have the ability to condition that as part of a regulation.
Right. And I would set a threshold significantly lower than 19. I mean, we want to make sure it would be consistent with the watershed plans, which is, what we would need for effluents from those systems.
Right. The treatment plants are being held to 10.
Right. So if we said, if the system gets below 10, until you need to replace it, you don't necessarily hook up, because it's still providing the same amount of environmental protection. And if somebody does that, to try to get a jump ahead, knowing sewer might not be for another 10 years or whatever, or 20 years, depending on where they are in the phasing. I don't want to necessarily punish those people for trying to make that good decision and provide a disincentive, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think there's a broad category of technologies out there that don't meet very good performance standards, and a lot of them are the systems that exist today, the older generation of those types of systems. So I wouldn't have qualms with those being, just say, okay, that's it on that. But I think, with some of the better systems that are coming down the pipe, if they were to get approvals as would be required, then I wouldn't want to, like I said, I don't want to disincentive somebody putting that in and trying to do what they feel is good for their town, knowing that, when the sewer comes, they're going to have to just rip it out, and now they're going to be on the hook for another betterment. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I'm Meredith Harris, and I'm also on the Sewer Commission.
Mm-hmm.
But wouldn't it then, it's then going to be decided on an individual basis, but wouldn't it also depend on how close they are to a fragile waterway? I mean, I think that the decisions would have to be made very carefully on who'd be penalized or not. I agree with you. I don't think people should be penalized if they're acting in good faith.
Right. I mean, there is a bit of a case-by-case assessment that goes there, because something that's up watershed, that has a little bit less of an impact, I mean, that you might give a little bit more latitude than something that's, closely abutting one of our fragile water sources, where the sewering plan is to try to entirely remove the nitrogen from that watershed by perhaps utilizing the dispersal beds at the golf courses down in New Seabury. So if that's certainly the plan, it doesn't have to be necessarily a totally broad rule. We could be a little bit, I think, more thoughtful in the way that we do it, so that, people, like I said, people up watershed who want to do something good, they're not disincentivized, but people who are maybe closer, they might want to wait on their project rather than do it now. They might want to wait until sewer comes along so that they don't have to do, so it kind of works, works in a lot of ways. I hope, do you have any?
I think your explanation, again, exactly how I feel. And I think it's with a lot of understanding. It's really the best for us to determine how we move along.
Mm-hmm.
I think people need, from you folks, much better education than you're giving them. I'm very disappointed in your time schedules, and I think you're way off. I built sewers for 40 years. They don't just go underground. There's a lot of work behind it, and a lot of time, and a lot of preparation. And my only comment is, thank God for the comments that our chairman makes, to help other people, to help people along your way. But your scheduling needs a very big review. You're gonna level with people the years it's gonna take to really produce what you rightfully should be doing. But your time is way off.
Is your name Ernie? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Could you speak into, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
What our chairman has just described is excellent. And I am certainly behind exactly what he had to say here tonight. My disappointment is in your scheduling, in your approach to this, in the time that you are not properly looking at. This is a very monstrous project. You can only give and make a very small amount of areas become useful, or used in place. So I think you need to look at your scheduling along with what our chairman has just said, and be very aware that there's other systems, there's other things that could come along in that time period. And you need to take a real good hard look at, how long it's really gonna take.
Well, that's why we propose to put together a map with timeframes, so that people could make those kinds of decisions based on affordability and time. We don't want to inhibit the use of IA systems at all. So it felt to us like by providing this map and the timeframes, if people wanted to invest in a IA system, they could do it. Especially if they were not in an area where sewers were not going to come in the first place.
Exactly.
That's okay. I knew this was going to happen, so.
So I guess what I'm taking from what you've said is that you would agree with making those changes, but you would have conditions to place upon it.
Yeah, I think there would need to be some conditions on how that would play out, because like I said, I don't, I think it also provides a bit more flexibility. I mean, a bylaw can always be changed later on, but I think it's better to try to get it right the first time. So, or a Board of Health regulation, otherwise. So, yeah, I just want to put some careful consideration in before just, saying, nope, as soon as this comes through, doesn't matter what you have to replace it, because I think that's a little bit too heavy-handed.
Okay.
That would be my opinion on that. But I'm certainly amenable to looking at ways that we can, make sure that houses are connecting when we really want them to, particularly in the watersheds where the sewering plan is such that we're intending to get that nitrogen completely out of the watershed by, by having final dispersal fully outside of that particular watershed. So,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, we'd have to have a lot of back and forth,
Yep.
between us on trying to figure out how that could work, but I'd be amenable to
Oh,
trying to figure
absolutely.
out how to make it happen.
Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, absolutely,
Good.
absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
So it would be feasible then to come up with a joint regulation together?
Yeah, I think we
Yes.
could come up with
I
something,
think it would be most appropriate
yep,
to do that.
yeah. Yeah, it would be, it
Very
would,
appropriate.
yeah, it would put a good amount of force behind it too, to have us both, have a joint regulation, so.
Okay.
So do you want to go through some of the specific questions that you had in this, or?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, if you have time for us.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Meredith. You want to read number one?
Yeah, it's essentially the issue of, as we're waiting for the treatment plan and the treatment plan in phase one and the sewering plan to come online, and I guess this is similar to what you're dealing with Santoui Pond. What do we tell people now about failing septic systems and cesspools on the ponds or on the rivers? And then what kind of strategy could we recommend for them?
And this is one of the questions that I've been asking for a really long time, and one of the answers that I would hope would come out of our broader discussions with the Board of Selectmen, because I think, that decision needs to be, it eclipses just the Board of Health. It needs to be really a group decision, I kind of feel, as to what we're going to do. And it's, because there are, the way Title V is set up, unless there's a
Fiscal commitment.
unless there's a very prescient reason for us to disallow somebody to do something, we can't just say no right now. You know what I mean? Without some sort of a bylaw or regulation put into place that would give us something to stand on, we can't just arbitrarily say, well, we're not going to do that anymore. There's going to have to be, I think, a broader discussion as to where we're going to say that people who have failing systems need to replace them. What are the timelines that people could wait, before replacing, knowing when sewers hopefully will come? So I think, it's a tough to answer question. It's not quite cut and dried. And I think it's, like I said, I think it's not just the Board of Health that needs to be in on that discussion. I think it's a town-wide discussion because it's, like I said, it touches on everybody.
Right.
So,
Absolutely. It's not just, something that we can develop without everybody's input. And I think people are beginning to understand that more and more as we go along here. And
yeah,
that's the route we should be taking.
yeah.
Yeah.
Perhaps we could bring that up at the December 13th meeting as a discussion piece.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to failing septic systems, there's a timeline that goes with those. And it's, if there's wastewater running on the ground, that's kind of like, sorry, you've got to replace it. Particularly with the failing ones. The ones that we see probably more often are, honestly, when somebody wants to do, a raise and replace, or, they want to change the flow, they want to add a bedroom, they want to do, and particularly this happens in New Seabury very frequently, or, the Papaneset area, where somebody buys one of the small little cottages that was down there and they want to make, their own little McMansion. So we need to think about, do we start as a town, do we say, okay, at this point, we're going to start to deny those projects until sewer becomes available in those areas. And that, like I said, I don't feel that that's necessarily just a Board of Health decision. I think that's got to be
Absolutely.
part of that conversation as well. It's not just the failing systems, but it's also has to be, those upgrades. It's effectively almost putting some sort of a moratorium on increasing in flows and those things in those particular areas. So that, like I said, that's a bigger discussion than just the three of us. So,
Right. But I think there's a position of urgency also that needs to take place. As you said, it's been discussed for many years.
yeah,
And we know that the sewers aren't going to be coming tomorrow. But there is an urgency that we have to start laying down the line with saying, this is what we need to plan for, and this is when it has to go into effect. But I think we can't let it keep hanging on. That we have to have a direction, and we have to have an end point where we come to that decision.
yeah, I agree, exactly. Yeah, I think,
You also got to understand, and the reason why I brought up that time that you need to really concentrate a little better on is because we're going to be getting field systems continuously while we're building the sewer system. And at some point, we have to control that. We have got to,
Yeah.
or we're not doing anything for the environment, for the town, for the health of the town. So people are going to have to understand through multiple agencies that the failures are going to come, because it's going to take a long time before you're going to get that sewer down the street.
True.
yeah.
I, of course, agree with whatever Brian and Ernie are saying. I think I agree with Ernie's point on the scheduling part. I feel that, yes, we have the urgency to decide on how we're going to regulate the sewer systems, the failing sewer systems, and so on, present and future. But I do think that and I know it's like one of those things where obviously you're not going to have a hard deadline on the sewer systems, given COVID situations, given everything that happens. We're obviously expecting some sort of errors to happen, but I do think that the president's takes on us determining a somewhat deadline on the sewer systems to even begin a regulation conversation, because we did start something at the previous meeting, and I know we've had a lot of conflict because we've had a couple of members stating that, yes, if they're failed, we're gonna, we have to get them fixed, because they're immediately affecting our bodies of water. And at the same time, we also have the part where people are gonna push back on us if we're being like, no, you gotta fix it right now. So I do definitely think that top priority should be having some sort of solid deadline, and of course, discussing this part, going forward at the next board meeting to be like, yes, we have a somewhat middle ground to continue assessing the failed septic systems.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, and I agree. I think it needs to be something a little more concrete than this is what we're planning. Maybe it's in areas where, the money is lined up and the sewer is definitely going in, but, the plans can change. It's an adaptive management plan. It's designed that way to be able to be flexible for if you find another technology or you find a different way of doing things, that you can change the plan. So I would hate to reject a project based on the thought that the plan says this without, more concrete, like the funding is assigned to this, we've got it approved through town meeting, we're gonna be putting the pipe in within the next couple of years. But, I mean, anything beyond that, to me, is purely speculation at this point, because as we all know, it's the money, it's the funding piece of it, and that's never guaranteed. I'm optimistic right now with the infrastructure bill and all the federal funds, very optimistic. It's a tempered optimism, also knowing that, nationwide, there's a huge gap in infrastructure funding, particularly in the water and wastewater space, in larger cities, and those places have much bigger pull than Cape Cod. So, I mean, we might get a slice of that infrastructure pie, but it's going to be like a sliver, I don't want to just say, yep, we're doing it, it's going to happen because of the infrastructure bill, but I don't know, I think that would be, to me, misplaced optimism, because, like I said, you look at some of the cities around our country where they've done engineering studies on their sewer systems, and they've been graded out to a failing, they've been given them a D or, worse, in terms of the engineering and the billions and billions of dollars that the cities are going to suck up out of the infrastructure bill to fund sewer fixes from the first round of Clean Water Act sewer systems.
It's the writings on the wall. I mean, the sewers and the water pipes that are in the ground today, that have been there for many, many years, okay? They're not working.
Yeah.
They're falling apart every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I need you to tell people the truth.
Yeah.
We're in a very serious situation here.
Yeah.
We're not going to have any opportunity whatsoever to move sewerage or water if we don't get started. There's a huge amount of money, just as you said. In my whole life, the government says everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And it never is. So,
Yeah.
it's
I
it's
commented-
pathetic.
I commented on a email that I got that was sent out by NOWRA, the National On-Site Wastewater Recycling Association. I think I copied you, Brian, on it. And it said that based upon the infrastructure bill, that the EPA was going to make a new program to help, they call it decentralized septics, or decentralized systems, which are on-site septic systems, where they're going to give $15,000 to a property owner. And they didn't have, and this program has not been set up yet. And my comment to them was, why is the EPA making a whole new program when the USDA has had the 504 program in place for 20-plus years, where they've been giving grants and loans out to fix septic systems? And I did get a response from the president of NOWRA to state that they're going to pass that up the food chain to see that the EPA doesn't start from scratch and take a long time to get that program going, when they can use the USDA structure to do it. And I'm hoping that happens. But that says to me that there's money out there that will hopefully get to those areas with on-site septic systems. So that, I'm just supporting your point to say that there is money available now coming federally, which was not there before.
Right, right. So there is, I think in my discussions with EPA, particularly Region 1 and Region 2, there is, I don't want to call it excitement, but there's a lot of optimism in some of the alternatives to full-on sewering. And I think that's part of what's driving EPA's thoughts behind putting together a program like that to start to provide funding. Because Suffolk County, Long Island, that's what they're doing. They're not sewering anything down there. That's all, it's all innovative alternative systems down there. And they're systems that aren't generally approved up here, but they're approved down there, and they're putting them in the ground by the, tens and hundreds, over the next couple of decades and, into the thousands. They've got 800,000 cesspools to replace in Suffolk County, and they're not doing sewer. So I just want to make sure that as we move forward with these plans, that there's always that continuous discussion and that willingness to look at the adaptive management aspect of things to make sure that, that we're always making sure we're providing the best value to the taxpayers of the town as we're developing our plans and moving forward with things. That's kind of what what my general feeling has been about it is always keep that in mind and be open to those things that come down the pipe. And I know there's a lot of excitement out there about innovative systems right now and some of the technologies that are coming through. And they're not generally approved in Massachusetts. I totally get that. But they show a lot of promise. And if they do get that approval, I think we should take a serious look at where those can be utilized in our watersheds to reach the same goal that we would have with a heavy infrastructure option. Not to say we need to stop the sewer plan, because I think that's a horrible idea. I don't want to say let's slow this down, because I think that's the worst thing we could do. But in those areas that we're looking at of phase 3, phase 2, phase 4, whatever we end up with, just to make sure that we're always looking at those to say, well, what if we did this there instead? I mean, it's still 10 years away, let's start to think about how we could do that now. I think that's an important conversation to have as we move forward with these things. So that's kind of my thought on that.
I mean, once people realize, how serious this matter is, they got to go after their legislature. They got to go after their congressmen and their senators and tell them to stop spending all this money you got foolishly, because it's got to go in the proper direction. It's got to be spent. If you want to save this environment, if you want to save this, our ponds and our lakes and our beaches, you better start putting the money where it needs to go. And right now, it's underground.
I think that Mashpee is a really good example of multiple types of systems, because if we just look at what our topography is, just looking at, I'm on Mashpee Wakeby, and as we've been looking at sewering in phase 2 and how we're going to be able to help mitigate the issues that are happening there, we've got places that are very, very difficult to get to. And in order to do the sewering. So we've got to think about alternative situations, as well as what are the different ways. Can we become a model in looking at the different ways of all the different geographies or topographies that we're looking at? Yeah,
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. And always remember, you don't necessarily totally have to reinvent the wheel every time, because there are 15 towns trying to do the same thing right now, and they're all looking at how do we get this done, and not have it cost, what was the first estimate that was thrown out there for sewering on the Cape? It was like $5 billion or something region-wide. How can we drive that cost down, and how can we do, we all need to work together on this and figure out how to make this all work at the best cost, because there are a lot of people who can't afford it. And I guess
that's why my comment is, you $5 billion bothers me as I watch television, and $5 billion goes away. What are you putting it over there for? I'm sorry, maybe you shouldn't comment any further.
It's tough to watch the next, multi-billion-dollar aircraft carrier being put together, and can we just have a little bit?
Sometimes I wonder, though, if they don't forget, when we're looking at all of these alternatives, they don't forget that the goal is to meet the TMDL in the particular water body.
Right.
And, for example, if you use a lot of IA systems that get nitrogen down to 19, I don't know if you're going to get there.
Probably not with those technologies, yeah.
Right. But if you use, in our case, our plant, we hope, is going to perform at 3 milligrams per liter nitrogen on an average annual basis. So I think you have to start evaluating whatever approach you're going to use. You have to start determining what kind of influence it's going to have on the TMDL.
Right.
For example, in Pompanesett, I just figured out today, looking back through old Mass Estuaries Project reports, that in order to return Pompanesett to the water quality we desire, we need to remove 55,000 kilograms of nitrogen. And our proposed Phase 2 plan only removes 29. So I don't know where the rest is all going to come from in terms of removal. Obviously, a little bit from Sandwich, a little bit from Barnstable. But it just strikes me when people are talking about IA systems that frequently I don't think they're aware that that's the goal.
Right.
It's good that they want to play a role in meeting the TMDL. That's great. But if they're going to invest $40,000 or $50,000 at 19 milligrams per liter, or even 10 milligrams per liter, is it really making a difference in terms of meeting the TMDL?
Right, right. And that's the calculation that needs to happen. I mean, I worked on a project in the Pleasant Bay watershed with the Pleasant Bay Alliance. And one of the goals of part of that project was to take a look at a particular watershed in the town of Brewster and figure out, what the town of Brewster basically said is, we can't afford to do sewer here. We're going to look at what are the other options. And it was Horsley Witten who did a calculation on what would the IA systems in that watershed what would their discharge need to be in order to meet our TMDL for this watershed. And it turned out that calculation was somewhere in the range of 12 milligrams per liter. Now, I'm not saying that that applies to every watershed, because you have to do that calculation for every single watershed where you're going to be doing these things. But there are technologies that are getting into that space. So where you have watersheds where you can utilize those technologies because they're demonstrated to reach into the range that you need, I think that they're a very viable option and very cost competitive option when you're talking about, a $90,000 per parcel sewer versus, a $40,000 or $50,000 system in IA technology that's managed properly. So I just, those are the kinds of things that I'm talking about. I want to make sure that, and I totally understand where you're coming from, because in the past there's been a lot of excitement about IAs, but they're not, the ones that in the past didn't get us there. 19 milligrams per liter, let's forget about that number, because it was a drinking water standard anyway, and I don't think we should be talking about it anymore. We need to look at those technologies that are going to get us in that sub-10 range, and we're getting there with those technologies. I work at the test center. This is what I do for a living. Like, I literally probably spend more time thinking about people's poop than anybody really should. So I think that, as we move forward, as those technologies gain approvals and demonstrate that they have the potential to get removals that we do need, I just want to make sure that we remain open to the option of utilizing those where they're applicable in order to save people money. I'm not saying, like, let's just go whole hog on it right now, saying as the situation develops, let's just be open to that possibility, because I think there's a lot of opportunity to save a whole lot of taxpayer money by utilizing alternatives to just centralized. Centralized is the best option right now today. I just want to make sure in 5 years, 10 years, if there's something better, we have the willingness to say, let's do that instead because it's cheaper. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that's my spiel. I'll come off my little soapbox on that one.
I think we're good.
Okay.
I hope we can bring that, our question one about how do we handle people in the interim?
Yeah.
If we could discuss that as a group on the 13th, that'd be great.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's something that we really need to take a look at in a broader context. So,
Okay.
absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
I did touch upon that at the last selectmen's meeting. that in phase one, the board has the ability to issue up to a 5-year extension for those in phase one. But where there's no fiscal commitment in phase two yet, the board can't issue any extensions on that. But where with a septic failure, the owner has 2 years to fix the septic system. And within the next 2 years, we're in FY '23 in the spring, we're gonna have a warrant article to get the funding for phase two. And so if that does occur, then you have a town fiscal commitment and a plan, then the board can issue extensions based upon that. So there are some other things that have to happen here to use the board's authority to, if they so choose, to grant these extensions for the failed septic systems to ultimately be fixed or to be put into the sewer system. So, and it's, for me, I think it is more a time frame issue when we're looking at making that decision, because we're gonna look at the rest of the water bodies in town. We're gonna look at the estuaries, we're gonna look at the ponds, and we've started with Santoui Pond, and we touched upon the other areas where there were cesspools within 100 or 300 feet of those other water bodies. Well, we're gonna continue working on that, but I think we need to look at, as a group, you know, what about phase 5, phase 4, phase 3, where they're further out? Should those be the areas that we issue those requirements to upgrade those systems, because they're more than likely gonna get a full Title V life cycle out of their system. And so, and that, because I think the pushback is here for those properties in phase 1 and 2, if they are more likely gonna have sewers within the next 5 years, we can't or shouldn't make them, the owners, double dip into paying for a system and then paying for a connection. So, for me, it's really the time frames. You know, we need to nail down the time frames on when things are gonna happen so that the decision can be made.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at some point, there's gonna have to be a conversation with DEP. And it's gonna be a bigger conversation than just the town of Mashpee, which is, how do we deal with this on a go-forward basis? Because as inspections occur, knowing that sewer's planned, what is their willingness going to be to look at extending that beyond a 5-year time frame in certain situations? I think that conversation is gonna have to occur too. Because I don't think DEP's ever dealt with this, basically, which is like a wholesale replacement of things at this scale, you know? They've dealt with smaller projects, but I don't think quite to the scale that Cape Cod is gonna be. So I think they're open to ideas on how we approach these things. I work very closely with a lot of people from DEP, and I think there's very much a willingness at DEP to take a look at different ways of doing things that they wouldn't have maybe thought about before. So I think it's a good time to maybe start to think about what those conversations, what those asks to DEP might be, and how we can maybe change regulations or, you know, DEP policies to make sure that we're doing this as efficiently as possible. So.
Agreed.
Also, I have a question in regards to that. So if we're talking about timeframes, which is of course important, but if we have failed systems, what is their contribution to the increase in nitrogen and the phosphorus and to essentially harming the bodies of water that are nearby? So how?
It's,
I don't know if that's taken into consideration or not.
so, yeah, that's a long discussion.
Yeah.
One which I would certainly love to have, but I think there's kind of like a scale, and let's put a cesspool on one end of the scale and a failing new Title V system on the other end of the scale. The cesspools are the ones that are the biggest offenders. Okay. And the stressed or failed Title V system is probably the least offending in terms of nitrogen getting into the groundwater from that failure. Because the cesspool, to me, we define it as a failure. It's a failure all across the board. Mm-hmm. So cesspool does the least. A failing Title V system, I would say, is better than a cesspool. And then a functioning Title V system is obviously the best on that sort of spectrum.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the brief explanation.
In terms of nitrogen reduction.
Okay.
I'm not talking about necessarily all the public health aspects, but if we're just talking about nitrogen and how much it removes, that's where I would place the scale.
Okay, thank you.
I think as a result of this meeting, we will go ahead and start to construct a map with timeframes. All of it based on whether we pass at town meeting or not.
Yeah.
But we can go ahead and do that for at least the first 2 phases.
Yeah, that would be extremely helpful. And if I could put on another hat for a moment. So I work for Barnstable County. We have a program called the Community Septic Management Loan Program. And that loan program, obviously by the title, is designed to replace failing septic systems. It provides low-interest loans for folks to just be able to replace their system. They have a 20-year repayment term on that. That loan program offers the ability for people to fund their sewer connection, also using the same resources. So recently, we've been looking at that program to make sure that we can make it sustainable as this new wave of sewer connections and IA technologies is going to start to come into the scene. And it's maybe this is self-serving, but it's difficult for us to be able to predict for that program when we're going to need infusions of cash. So to have like that map that gives us a sense of what the phasing is going to be and what a sensible time frame is for that makes it easier for us to make predictions, to make sure that funding is available for people to use. Because we're looking at lowering the interest rate significantly on that program to make it even more palatable and open for people to use as well. So that's helpful in that regard to me. That's my self-serving little pitch for that.
Wasn't the funding supposed to be sustainable that was my question too. It was supposed to be sustainable in perpetuity, but if you've got more and more customers coming on board, it's not going to be unless there's some plan.
Yeah, and those are discussions we've been having with the Clean Water Trust and how we make that happen. And it really boils down to interest rates on things and try to make the program sustainable. That program has a significant, it's not a very significant amount of money that's been collected on the interest over the last 15 years. But there's some potential to utilize that offset some of the administrative costs, maybe bring in a lower interest rate. But we want to make sure, first and foremost, that it's a sustainable program, because even if we sewer everything that we want to sewer, there are still going to be septic systems in the world on Cape Cod. It's just a fact of life. They're still going to exist, and we're going to have to replace them, or we're still going to have to provide assistance for those folks. So we want to make sure that the program's sustainable in the long haul, and that we don't just completely deplete the resource in our efforts to make it affordable for people to do like a sewer connection or an IA system for a TMDL. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, but I'm trying my best to make sure it's available in the long term. So.
Excellent.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for allowing us to come before you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this conversation. We really need to do this much more frequently. I think this is a good opportunity, and I think maybe we can do this once every couple of months at least, so we can have a little back and forth and get a better sense, because we're going to need to communicate a lot more, I think, than the boards historically have at this, conservation, us, the sewer commission, and the selectmen's board. So this is all good stuff.
That Chatham template that the Board of Health has in Chatham, that is a good template for a regulation. So when you mention that, I think that Chris and I can sit down and hash that out, and then go through each of our departments, or boards and commissions, and work that out.
Okay,
Because I think that is a great template to start with.
very good. Thanks
All right.
again.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
You're welcome to stay. We're actually going to take up a septic system next. So.
Just what you want to listen to.
Okay, so let's go under item number 2, under new business, a review of a request for Title V variance for 38 Waterway. And thank you for your patience, Raul. But that discussion is germane as we think about these things to projects like these, not in the immediate term. It can't factor into what we think about this project, but it is things, it's something that we should all keep in the back of our minds as we're considering these projects. So with that, thank you.
Thank you. It was informative, that's for sure. It was good to listen to. Good evening. For the record, Raul Lizardi from Cape and Islands Engineering, representing the applicant and the homeowners of the property at 38 Waterway in New Seabury here in Mashpee. This property is in the process of being sold, and the septic system on the property was failing an inspection, or failed the inspection. The reason for failure is that the leaching facility or the leaching bed in the backyard does not meet the 4-foot separation to groundwater. When I visited the site, there are 2 sewer lines coming out of the house. One comes out to the front. However, there is no records of a septic system out in the front of the house. There is another sewer pipe coming out of the back. There's a septic tank on the back and a leaching field in the back. What we're proposing to do is to replace the entire system. Currently, the Title V inspection noted that the septic tank in the backyard, it's also structurally failing. So we're proposing to remove everything. We're proposing a new septic tank. Because the backyard, it's low in elevations, we're talking about elevations of 7s. We're proposing a lift station right after the septic tank. And the new leaching field will be in the front yard. It will be located within the driveway of the existing residence. This location, however, does not meet Title V or local setback requirements. The leaching field does improve on setbacks to the actual wetland areas. The leaching field in the backyard is probably 50 feet from the salt marsh. The proposed leaching field in the front, which is proposed of precast chambers, is more than 100 feet from the salt marsh. So that's more than doubling that setback. However, we're going to be less than 10 feet to the street line, and we're going to be less than 20 feet to a full basement. It's a walkout basement. But in the front yard, the elevations are 14s, so that is a 20-foot required setback, and we only have 11 feet proposed. We also have only about 14 feet to the top of the coastal bank as a setback, and that's required to be a 50-foot setback in Title V. So we don't meet that regulation. And no matter where we place this septic, we have a coastal bank both to the left of the house and to the right. So either way, it's going to be a required variance. We chose to get to the 14 feet because the water service to the house is on the right side of the house, and to provide that proper 10.5-foot separation, we shifted it to the left. So there's 4 variances that I listed here. One of them could probably be questionable because this is a repair. So we have the setback to the street line from 10 to 6, setback to a full basement from 20 to 11, setback to a coastal bank from 50 to 14. And then there's a local bylaw that requires a setback to breakout grades, and it's a calculation in the local bylaws. But as a repair, I'm not sure if it applies, but if it does, we have it listed as number 4, which happens to be the same setback for the coastal bank in this particular case. For remediation or for equal protection, what we're proposing a 40 mil liner to be installed in the side of the coastal bank and in the side of the foundation. So we're wrapping the 2 sides of the system and the whole length that's facing the house. And that's all the presentation I have. The liner, the top of the liner is going to be at the elevation of the top of the field. The bottom of the liner is 3 feet below. This chambers with the stone is roughly 3 feet deep. Only 2 feet of it counts for calculations. So the liner is covering the whole side of the system, but it's 5 feet away from the system, not adjacent to the stone. Excuse me. Yeah, if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Sure, Brent. Glenn, do you have any comments on this one to start off with?
I have reviewed the plan and made my comments, and revisions have been made, so I'm all set with it. It is definitely a far improvement for what was there. System in the backyard did not have anywhere near the separation of groundwater that it should. So the pump system to get it up into the driveway certainly gives it a great distance to groundwater than it didn't have. So it does not meet any of the requirements to require an IA, so it doesn't breach any of our other setback. So I think that the system designed. The one comment that I have is that it is an access issue to get into the backyard, so that tank may end up being a poly tank.
Right. I did the calculations for buoyancy, just strictly using a poly. It will become buoyant unless we have like a 18-inch slab. So that's why my recommendation will be to stay precast.
Okay.
But if the installer, and I have talked to the installer who at the moment has been Cavosa, been involved in this. So I've been in touch with them. If they chose to do a poly, I will have to review the buoyancy calculations because it will be completely different than the buoyancy calculations on this plan.
They'd have to put some ballast in the hole, you think?
It will probably be a slab underneath
Yeah.
with the stainless steel
The cables.
tie-ups. Yes.
Yeah.
You said Cavosa's doing the work?
They're so far the ones that have been contacted. Now we're doing the work for the current owner. The buyer is the one that's going to be in charge of the installation. So they would be the ones hiring the installer. So it could be someone else for the install.
So it's, yeah, designing for 3. 34. Okay. You have any questions on this one, Ernie?
No.
Good. I mean, it's much better than what was there, for sure. And to address Raul's question about the Mashpee reg, which is
Yeah.
at 47 feet for breakout, is that,
I think that's from the old Title V. The 150 times the slope is the old calculation in the 78 code. I think it's just left in our regs because we haven't deleted it.
oh, okay,
So I think that's just a carryover.
all right. Then maybe we can get that one. Get it on the
We
agenda and
we
get
have
rid
a
of it.
bunch of the regulations that need to be
Oh, okay.
updated because of the newer code. We haven't really attacked any of the older regs.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I mean, I don't have any qualms. I mean, you've got the liner, you've got the mitigations that I would typically expect for this type of a variance, so, and it's a vast improvement over the existing system, so, yeah.
I'm good.
Okay.
Should I go for it? I was waiting for
I
Ernie.
think there's some good language applied, or there
Yeah.
for you, so.
It's all there.
All right, so I motion to approve the request for Title V variance at 38 Waterway, with the design plan presented with mitigation for the variances as indicated on the design plan.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you, Raul.
Thanks for waiting all the time that you did.
No problem.
Okay, item number 3, review of preliminary subdivision plan filing for 532 Main Street, the BFC Group.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I will be reclusing myself at
Okay.
this time. See you
All right.
later.
See you in a few. Could you give us the background for this one, please, Glenn?
Sure. A preliminary subdivision plan has been submitted for review and approval to the planning board. Statutes require Board of Health review and approval with a recommendation made to the planning board. In this case, the lots off of Route 130 are the northerly border of Nicoletta's Way. 2 lots to the east are in Zone 2, with the remaining lots not in Zone 2. The access provided is similar to the roads for Nicoletta's and Echo Road, and these lots will be serviced by Title V septic systems based upon their use and Board of Health regulation. So I reviewed the plans, I did not have any issues. The drainage is all set, so I recommend approval.
Yeah, not a whole lot to this, so.
Now, there'll be industrial, commercial lots, just like Nicoletta's and Echo, so we're gonna have to review each of the applications for the new commercial or industrial properties at a Board of Health meeting. So the board is gonna see every one of these applications.
Okay.
But I think all the basics have been provided.
Sounds good to me.
Wait,
I mean, there's not much to really look at, so, I mean, it's,
so they'll be just extending more down? Is that
so they're adding in this road, so this road is existing, this road is existing. We're gonna add this down the middle and then, I guess, make these lots available, because that's kind of the idea, right?
Yep, yep.
I don't see how they're not available already, but,
Right.
okay.
I guess they're good with the amount of space that they'll be getting between the two.
Right.
Yeah. All right, no questions there.
Okay, do you like to make a motion?
Sure. All right, a motion to approve the preliminary subdivision plan as presented at 532 Main Street.
Okay, I will second that motion. All those in favor?
Aye?
Aye. All right, very good.
Let me grab Bernie.
Okay, thank you.
So we just have the COVID update, and then we need to do an executive session.
We do need executive.
Yep, it'll be quick. You want to read the COVID update?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
All right. So item number 1, under old business, the COVID-19 update.
Okay, as of November 27th, the 14-day percent of positivity rate in Mashpee was 5.02%, and the average daily incident rate was 27.1. As of this meeting, Mashpee has 55 current cases in isolation that have been reported. We've been participating in the biweekly Health Agents Coalition conference calls and updated the COVID page on the town website. We maintained the COVID case tracker and provided daily updates to the town manager and emergency dispatch services. We provided guidance regarding vaccinated and unvaccinated close contacts to town departments and a number of businesses in the community. We prepared a comprehensive guidance document which was distributed to all department heads that included isolation, quarantine, testing, and mask requirements for vaccinated and unvaccinated and symptomatic and non-symptomatic close contacts, as well as for employees who have not been identified as close contacts but who are experiencing COVID symptoms. We've scheduled and advertised a pediatric vaccine clinic for 5 to 11-year-olds at Christ the King Parish Hall. The first dose will be given on December 18th, and the second dose will be given 3 weeks later on January 8th. So we have 45 families that were signed up for that?
We don't have anyone signed up for it. We have 45 families that initially expressed interest to the school nurse coordinator.
Okay.
And that's what precipitated the
Okay.
Okay.
We're currently working with the VNA and Cape Cod Healthcare Pharmacy to schedule a community booster clinic, which will occur hopefully in the next few weeks. We've been referring homebound residents to the VNA for in-home booster shots, and we remain in close contact with the school nurse coordinator to track cases that impact or have the potential to impact students, faculty, and the public.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would like to, again, thank the county for their absolutely razor-sharp precision work. I rode with my wife today, and I brought my brother-in-law, and we drove down to the county, and we were there early, and there was a sign right there, come on in, even if you're early, which I thought was really nice. And we were in and out of there, the amount of time you had to sit down before they let you leave. And once again, it's another tremendous performance. You know what's interesting to me, over the years, I get the same nurse. She's at the church, she's over there. I said, you're everywhere. She even called me Ernie. She went, hey, Ernie, come over here.
You're a memorable guy.
That's so funny. But nice job down
That's
there.
great.
Nice job, all you guys.
Glad that worked out.
Great job.
Fantastic.
Did you have an appointment, Ernie, or did you just
Nope.
walk in?
Nope.
Yeah, they're limiting their walk-ins now.
They're limiting their walk-ins, yeah.
Yeah, if you don't get in, if you haven't got an appointment, I suggest you get there very early. And of course, they are taking people, like myself, I had open heart surgery. Hey, they said, come on in.
Yeah.
You know, and my brother-in-law has a very serious problem, and my wife just had some things done. And they accept that, you know, at our age, and come on in.
That's great. That's great.
And
Yeah.
there was, when we left, there was a line.
I heard.
We're expecting a good turnout too. That's why we're kind of trying to get the church again to, for our venue for the booster clinic. We were looking at scheduling it at the Council on Aging, but I just don't see the Council on Aging being large enough with the response that the other towns have gotten. And I'm hoping we get a great response too. But the Council on Aging will not be able to handle the numbers that the other towns are getting. We would really need to do it at the church. So we are just waiting to hear back from them on some times and dates.
Oh, okay.
That's so good, so good.
One question I had, because I've noticed, I mean, numbers are going up again. I mean, we've gotten a few days of pretty heavy counts. Do you have, and maybe this is, I guess, more informational for us. Do you have access to the information that says who, COVID cases for those who are vaccinated? Is that something that could be put on the spreadsheet? I'm curious, as this new Omicron variant works its way through, if we start to see breakthrough on some of our vaccinated folks, that would be good information to know.
I was just about to bring that up because they found cases in several other states now, so now we're as close as New York now, so
Yeah.
that's my same concern too, that do we have a way of knowing, like,
Yeah, I don't know if they record
I
that
don't know
information.
that
maybe.
The only information
there's nothing on the state website.
yeah, it'd be the dashboard that we'd have to check, and I don't think they break it down like
I
that.
think the only way that I've heard is through the individuals themselves when we're talking to them and asking, or through the school. You know, we ask about vaccination status, and, I mean, we're definitely seeing breakthrough.
Yeah.
And for the first time, you know, I've heard of a couple of, talked to folks who were ill, they're quite ill, as a breakthrough, where generally those cases have been mild symptoms.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's a little concerning that they're getting, you know,
Heavier symptoms.
getting pretty sick.
Despite being vaccinated.
Do you think that, because the colder weather is coming, that's pushing this up a little? I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
would that be a little bit of a factor?
I would suspect. we'll start to see some of that.
Yeah, I think we've already had a lot of flu breakouts. People have,
Yeah.
I mean, I think the cold and the flu have gone on a rampage along with the COVID too. But I just had a question for you guys too, in regards to the school. Like, I know we always have immunization records at school requests, so has the COVID vaccine been added on as part of the immunization record for them? So is that how we get to know who's vaccinated in the school or not? Aside from the staff, I mean, like the students
I
specifically.
don't think we've asked that specifically. We could and get an answer for you, but I do know that it's part of camp requirements, so it would stand to reason that it would be part of school requirement, that if you're, not that you have to say whether you're vaccinated or not, but if you are vaccinated, it has to be part of the record, the immunization record that's provided to the camp at the time of registration.
Right.
So I would imagine when you provide your immunization records to the school,
Yeah,
per whatever their requirements are,
yeah.
that those immunization records, that the vaccine would be included in that.
Yeah, because I know my sister just started college this semester and stuff, and they asked for her vaccine card or some record of her getting the COVID vaccination. Otherwise, she wasn't gonna be able to go and be on campus at all, or I guess, attend. So that, I know
Is
that's
that in
one of,
Massachusetts?
yeah, at Suffolk University, yeah. And I know a lot of the other people are
We'll find
Are-
out for you.
yeah, so
We'll send an email.
doing
Okay.
that,
Yeah,
and then I
imagine
know
that.
4Cs is doing the same thing where they're asking for their COVID vaccination record or some sort of that to register for their spring classes. So I think it would be kind of important to know for public schools as well, and not
Yeah.
just colleges.
I'm trying to recall, we had our son vaccinated, he got his first shot, and I can't recall if that information bubbled to the school or not. I mean, I know DESE has set the threshold of 80% before they would remove the masking mandate in the school, so
Right.
I imagine they must be tracking it somehow. Or they're just depending on self-reporting from the schools, but, yeah,
Yeah,
I'd be
just a curious.
curious to know too, how it's going.
Right.
I can also look into the, what resources are out there to get some data about the breakthrough cases. I'll see what I can find out about
Okay.
that.
Providing the data and releasing the data is a different thing.
Right.
Right.
I was just
So
gonna-
the schools may get that information, but they can't release it.
Right, right.
So it's really not even an issue to ask vaccinated or unvaccinated, because they're not gonna release that publicly.
Right.
We do it for the contact tracing, but, they
But
may,
in general, you were looking for numbers
Yeah,
for
if you're looking for
breakthrough in
overall
general.
numbers,
overall
Yeah,
I
just the
think-
numbers of
Okay.
vaccinations, not
Yeah.
specific student lists or anything like that.
Yeah.
well, I
It'll just
think,
be-
just in the paper, Stacy said that they were at 55% or something, because if they're at 80%, they can take the mask off.
Right.
And I think she said they were like 55, so the Mashpee schools were not close enough to get to that 80 to demask.
Right, right. And, yeah, like Casey Coombs won't get there, because it's
Yeah.
5 and up right now.
Right.
So they'll
Right.
never, until they have vaccines for the younger ages, I mean, that one will be that way, but maybe Quashnet or middle high school.
The other thing that I noticed today, somewhere along the line, now they're talking about possibly March of '22, that we would not have to wear a mask. That's something that I heard through the news media. So I don't know how true that is, but that comment was made by a reputable news station.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, federally,
There've been some
on,
comments.
on transportation, they're gonna require them until March.
Oh, okay.
So, and makes sense because of the colder weather,
Yeah,
and so,
yep. Okay.
What I don't understand, and it really bothers the heck out of me, is when you first hear of a new, whatever you want to call it,
Variant.
shouldn't that country be immediately not be allowed to fly to America? I mean, isn't that a no-brainer?
Well, so I know as soon as not to cut you off, Ernie, but I know as soon as they found out the Omicron in South Africa, a lot of the surrounding countries had actually stopped any flights or, having people start traveling and stuff like that. So there were a lot of travel bans that happened right away, such as
Yeah.
Italy, Israel, they all took initiative and closed it off.
I think Canada too was on that list of countries. I
Canada
know there was a
been
flight
very-
from there to
Yeah.
Canada, and they tested everybody on the plane, and there were like, I don't know, it was like 40 people on the plane had the Omicron variant.
Yeah, so.
So, yeah, I mean, I have no doubt, it's in the States, where it's gonna be the next thing. It's too late. It's too
Yeah,
late.
yes, you're right.
It's too late.
Yeah, because it was just yesterday that they found it in California, and now today they reported 3 more states, so.
It'll be like when the pandemic first got started, which was like, oh, we heard about this one here, and oh, there was a little, and then it was, well, what about these what was that conference in Boston?
Yeah,
That big to do, and then all of a sudden, it's just gonna be,
it was biotech.
yeah,
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 I'll never forget that.
yep,
They had all those people who were
yep,
sick, and they
Mhm.
had a big conference.
yeah.
Nice call. Biotech.
So, all right. Nobody has anything else on COVID? We do need executive session this evening, so we'll need a motion to enter executive session and not enter into regular session.
Adjourn public session.
Adjourn, sorry.
And then take a roll call vote to enter into executive session, not to return to public session.
Okay. I always forget the order of operations on that. It's like, adjourn public. Open, I gotta write this down, exec, not to reopen. Okay, would someone like to make a motion to adjourn the public session?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
I second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, would someone like to make a motion to open executive session for the December 2nd, 2021 Mashpee Board of Health meeting? Not to reopen in public session.
All right. My motion to open executive session at this time, set at 7:30 on December 2nd, 2021, and not to return to the public session.
Second.
Okay, by roll call vote, please.
I, Kripani Patel.
Aye, Ernest Virgilio.
Aye, Brian Baumgartner. Okay, recorder is recording, but we need to stop this.
Yep. Wait for the light to go off.